Bybee. I'm with the Teams group working on our calling and meeting story. I'm very excited to talk to you today about our category solutions. We talked a little bit about in our last session about sort of our perspective on category solutions and how they're helping to move customers forward and get calling and meetings everywhere and take sort of best advantage of what's happening. But I'm going to save you sort of that pitch here, and I wanted to actually just talk about a story real quick. I was actually recently in Denver. Grew up in Denver, spent a lot of time there. My dad still lives there, half time. And we went to a museum, and we saw this interesting contraption in the museum. Now, I will give you the hint that this is like era 1800s sort of contraption. I'll give you sort of 20 seconds to just sort of ponder, what is this thing? Now, I will tell you that this is an answer to something. So, Denver in the 1800s was growing really rapidly, like many sort of places. And sort of the natural problem in the 1800s is you're building with a lot of wood. And so when you build with wood, things burn. And when things burn, you want to go and put out the fires. Well, so when you get to a city that's bigger than sort of what you can walk to in a block, you need to know where's the fire, right? More than people can yell, and so you got to come up with fireboxes. So fine, you put the fireboxes up, you pull the lever. What happens? Firemen show up. How do the firemen show up? Well, it turns out that you got to figure out who pulled the box and where was the box and where do you send the firemen and how do you get them out to the right place. So welcome to your 1800s era Cisco CUCM. You didn't realize they've been in business that long, right? All right, little burn, sorry. I'll be more friendly. Now, why are we here? Ultimately, we're dealing with some classic problems that we think have some new answers and have the opportunity to really sort of transform the way that your companies are doing business or the way that your customers are trying to do business. And so if you're here, let me just, again, sort of quick show of hands. How many of you are implementing a contact center for your own business? Okay, a good chunk of you. How many of you are here because you're implementing contact center for other people's business? Okay, a bunch of you. So maybe a little bit of both. Some overlap in the set there, great. So the natural question is Andy, because I've been working on this stuff for a while, when are we going to get contact center for Teams? That's part of why you're here, right? Now the question is okay, what kind of contact center experience are you talking about? Because the experience that you guys have been dealing with for the last 10 years is not necessarily the experience that we see going forward. And clearly the spirit of Teams is all about digital transformation. So why would you want to stick the 1800s era sort of firebox mechanical relays and levers onto your Tesla? Why would you do that? So we want to think about sort of how we can now start to move the experience forward. And we want to help you understand sort of how does Teams fit in with that and what are sort of the path for us to go and drive this transformation. Because by the same point, we also have some things that are running today and we want to make sure that we don't disrupt those, right? That's part of that core business critical workflow that we talked about with category solutions. So here's what we're going to sort of cover today. And so the first thing that I want to sort of drill in on is how do we go from sort of this classic view of the contact center, which is, hey, I make a call, I have people with headsets that are primarily responsible for taking calls from customers, and I need to make sure that I can take those because those are important to my business to bring those calls in. And when we're working with this, the classic sort of sandwich that we've created is that we have a system of record with CRM. We have a system of communication, which is typically our carrier, our telephony, or PBX, or UC system of some kind. And then we have something that has to hold it all together, which we think about as interaction management, but we also think of it as contact center, right? It's how do you blend the, what do we know about you, what are you doing right now, and how do we put those two things together in a way that makes sense? So a lot of you might be looking at this and saying, hey, can't I just put Teams into that lower box and we're good, right? Let's dust off our hands, call it good, move on to the next problem. I want to challenge that perception, though, because ultimately, when we think about this problem, it starts to sort of not deal with some other classic problems that are going on. So one of those classic problems is many of you, since you raised your hands, are thinking about how you're going to be actually moving to contact center. And I bet that there are many of you that are also either responsible or know the person responsible in your organization that's responsible for moving their UC or their PBX over to Teams for calling as well. Now, in some companies, you might be one and the same, so introduce yourself to yourself. In other companies, though, you might be separated by buildings, divisions, geography, time zones. Like, you could be completely different people working on very different things. And so you get this interesting classic problem. I have got a company. We've got people, we've got department lines, we've got toll-free lines, we've got a help desk, we've got salespeople, and we've got support people. And so the UC person looks at that and says, great, I've got lines. Now let's talk about getting phones. Let's talk about getting them moved over. Let's talk about like caller ID and what we're going to do about meetings. But the other half of you, or the other person on the other side of the world, looks at that and says, well, no, actually, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to retire this kind of legacy PBX that I'm running with my contact center, and I want to get that to Teams, but then I've also got to think about when my contracts are up, which might be different contracts from my UC system. And by the way, we can't take support down, so like we've got to continue to take those calls. So how are we going to balance these two things? And these groups don't always talk to each other, as you've probably experienced in direct daily experience. So we've got a challenge, right? How do we keep things running? How do we move forward? How do we transform? How do we bring things together in a way that makes sense? One thing that we think about classically with these types of challenges is go back to base principles. So what are the base principles? Number one, ultimately, we're here to try and actually drive better business results. So hopefully that is a fairly non-contentious concept for everybody here. Let's help the business succeed. Let's help our customers have a great experience. And we know, based on research, that businesses that focus on their customers and the journey that their customers have with their business actually do better. More revenue, more margin, better retention, better customer satisfaction. It's just better all the way around. So let's agree on the fact that we want our company to succeed and we want our customers to succeed. Okay, great, first principles. So now the question becomes like, who are your customers and what is this magical journey of which we speak? So this journey concept, I think I realize it's a little bit abstract in some cases. It feels a little squishy. But I think the reality of it is actually very, very specific. So let's look at some of those specifics. Number one, many of you are obviously here at this conference. You're probably not a teenager sitting at home with your phone Instagramming because you're here at the conference and probably talking to the people that are. That generational gap, right, of people in the workforce, people not in the workforce, they still have questions, they still call support. But that generational gap is driving a bunch of changes in how they expect to talk to their providers and the ways that they choose to do that. So text, as we have all experienced, is becoming much more popular. SMS, messaging with customers, companies that we're working with on Facebook, liking their pages. I still call them, but there's definitely a preference difference between somebody who is, let's say, in their 40s or 50s and what they choose to interact with their providers with versus somebody who is, like, let's say, just turning 20. Very, very different set of expectations. So as a customer that's trying to now serve your customers, you have to now recognize, I need a Facebook page, and I need a phone number, and I need an email address, and I need all these different ways to bring all these things together. And that's fine. That's a reality that we've all been dealing with, especially over the last 10 years or so. But why is Teams interesting? Teams is just interesting because it's actually dealing with the other aspect of this inside of the workplace on the other side of that, which is, in fact, those same types of changes in technology and generational differences are also happening inside of the company. So all the same types of changes now are happening where you're saying, hey, we're getting a much broader set of people, different diverse backgrounds, different perspectives. They're happening in different places. Everybody's working more virtually, and everybody's working together because the tech is bringing all these things now in effectively real time. And we're seeing that in a lot of sort of very clear places, especially in what we would think about as first-line workers. So many of you have heard Satya and heard us talk about Firstline over the last 18 months or whatnot, but this is a huge area of opportunity, not the least of which because we're bringing technology and digital empowerment to another billion people. So these are people that might have historically been left out of the process of taking care of customers or helping move your workflow forward. They just did things, but now they're actually empowered to communicate and to help each other and to move this conversation forward with your customers. And guess what? We call them Firstline for a reason, because they're out the front. They're the ones at the registers. They're the one taking care of the patients. They're the one that are dealing with these customers every single day. Now, are they in the contact center? No. Are they taking care of customers? Absolutely. So now when you think about this experience, I want you to sort of broaden your mind here about this problem that we're trying to solve, right? So now this is we're moving beyond like the, hey, let's pull the firebox and let's try and send the firemen to the right place. And we're now saying like, really, how are we going to start to build better buildings, right? That are more fire resistant, that are more accessible. How are we sort of putting all these things together? So this experience now starts to show up in different ways. So if I've got a showroom or a retail establishment or a hospital or any sort of physical location, I've got a set of people that deal with that person, and they have a set of people that they're working with in operations. If I'm working in wholesale, I'm thinking about sales, service, marketing, but then they also have to now worry about interacting with their supply chain and dealing with invoice customers, for example. If I've got store systems, right, those people that are on the front line that are handling those customers coming in, when the registers go out, what happens? So famous, not famous, but one of my more recent favorite stories was there's a large retailer in the United States, which I won't mention, but had a recent problem with their point of sale systems nationwide. The whole thing went out, nationwide. Huge, huge, huge retailer. Went to the store that day that it was going out. They had people at the front of the store literally telling everybody, we're sorry, sir, madam, we're not able to take sales today. Please come back in tomorrow. Tomorrow? Wow, that's crazy. Now, for those of you that have worked in IT, do you think that there was somebody somewhere that was fervently working to try and fix that problem? Of course. Did the poor person that was sitting in the front of the store telling me to go away, did they know that? No. Did the poor person that was at the register trying to get them to go through and process know that? No. I went to the manager. I said, when's the store going to be back up? He says, we don't know. The manager of the store doesn't know? So like, you got a classic information problem that's affecting my journey. I didn't buy anything, right? Now, did I go back the next day? Sure. But how much sales did they lose because their people didn't know what the next best step was going to be other than go away? That's not really the experience that you want. Now, that equivalent of go away, that's a negative impact to your customer journey. That happens all the time in a lot of different ways, right? So it's not always about the money. It can be about the customer satisfaction or completing the job. And now when you put these things together, the other thing you have to recognize is all of this stuff happens inside your company too. So every single time that you have a payroll problem and you go and you try to talk to accounting and they say, we don't know. So another classic example, I recently bought a vehicle and I was supposed to get my first payment for the vehicle. So I was waiting for an invoice and here's your account number. So I called them up and I said, I haven't gotten any of this information. This was a month after I bought the car. They said, when should I expect this information? They said, we don't know. There was something that happened in the billing process and they're trying to work it out, but we don't know. I said, well, so when should I get? We don't know, call back. It took them almost 2 months to get that thing fixed out. Did anybody call me back? No. Did I finally get an email saying, here's your account? Sure. Is that a good customer journey? Probably not. Did they empower the people that were in the organization to make the right conversation about what was happening in their internal systems? No. So think about this. I want you to just expand this notion of sort of where these customers are. Now apply this in your sort of everyday life. Now think about this. Generational change, different ways of interacting, all these things come together. We think there's an opportunity to start transforming this, not just by being able to think about crossing the store and the digital interactions and the digital channels and the other pieces that are there, but now think about this as actually connecting the teamwork that goes into actually making all those things happen. So it's not just sending me the mail that said, hey, here's your new lease, but it's actually sending and making sure that the people that were working on getting me that new lease were able to be effective and actually get to the right outcome and the right result. So this transformation, this is ultimately what we think Teams and Microsoft are helping your customers and you drive in your organization. And so that transformation obviously requires solutions, requires tech. So now we understand the problem. We understand we're trying to drive transformation. We're trying to move forward. So what does that start to look like? So ultimately, we think that if you're dealing with this notion of managing your customer interactions, a classic contact center, which is a horrible name for it, but that's just sort of the industry reality of it, your customer journey manager solution, right, is really about managing the experiences. It's about being able to make sure that you're getting the right interactions to the right people in both directions, right? So the fact that I needed to talk to somebody at the leasing office, that's one direction. The fact that they needed to talk with me, the right person needed to talk with me, That was the other direction, and they clearly didn't succeed at the other direction. But there's a lot of opportunities now to bring intelligence and workflow into this situation, right? So these are now key parts of the solution. And you want to do all of this with a level of insight and trust and confidence that becomes super, super valuable and important. Because if you mess with my data, whether because it's of GDPR and my ability to manage my data and see what you have on me, or whether it's because you're securing it from malicious actors, all of these things together now become part of the responsibility because you're managing the journey. So these are critical, critical solutions, and we think that it's also then critical that this fits in with your technology for managing and transforming inside your company. So how does Teams start to fit into this? Well, we see Teams as effectively a hub, not just for internal teamwork, which is really the story that we've been talking about for the last couple of years, but we increasingly see it as actually the hub for external connections as well. Now that's an important step, and I just want everybody to sort of process that for a second. Internal and external connections, tailored with the right business tools and workflows. And this is where Teams platform becomes crucial, and this is where being able to support all the different teams that you have in your organization becomes absolutely essential. You need to be able to configure and tailor this because not every team is the same. Not every process is the same. So there's a bunch of benefits that come from, we think, starting to leverage the Teams experience and framework for these types of customer interactions. Part of this is the natural orientation towards teamwork, collaboration, channels, mentions, all of these different sort of individual capabilities that help bring people together and get the right attention. You heard Satya talk about, this is really about making sure that you're on a, driving productivity with people's time and attention. But it's also about bringing communications together. So having an integrated calling and meeting experience into the overall client becomes vital to how you can make sure people are being effective. Having a conversational model, remembering that in fact, yes, I called you 2 weeks ago, and now you're going to call me back, and I should know that, and I shouldn't necessarily have to forget that, and it shouldn't take me 5 days to try and remember it. And I should be able to do all of these things in the place where you're spending most of your time. When we've done studies, what we've seen is that, in fact, people spend more than half of their time just communicating. So they're spending a bunch of their time in Teams already today. So, of course, it makes sense that you're going to now want to bring the communications that they need inside of that experience, and to do it in a way that's much more efficient and less context switching. So you put all these things together, we think there's an amazing opportunity to now have these two vital services really come together to help drive your business forward. Now, part of that is in looking and saying, okay, so what does this mean? What does this look like? So ultimately, this isn't about any one of these things. It's actually about blending all 5 of these things. You want to think about the conversations, interactions you're having. You want to think about the way and the experiences that you're putting together. You want to think about the business process and workflows. You also want to think about the insights that you're going to be able to uniquely bring because you're managing that journey. And you want to think about all of the connectivity and network capabilities that put these things together. And ultimately, we think Teams can bring sort of 3 core values to this. One is about being able to connect all of these pieces together to help you extend your experience into Teams and inside of your product, and being able to actually power and transform these core capabilities in these solutions to just go above and beyond really all the things that they've been driving together. So when you look at this, connect, extend, power, these are important elements that we think are going to really drive, and they're going to get delivered because of 4 different layers. This is about experiences that we have in Teams. It's about capabilities we have in phone system. It's about capabilities that we bring with our people-centric platform in Microsoft 365, that platform for productivity. And it's all of the goodness that comes inside of Microsoft Azure. So you're talking about 4 amazing sort of levels of value and opportunity here to drive and enhance and accelerate all of these solutions that you're driving for your customer journey management. So with that, let's just dig in on some of the things that we've got today. So one, inside a phone system, we have our own voice applications. So voice applications give you things like IVR, auto attendant, ways to answer the phone, ways to let people find the right person they can talk to. These are connected in with our own phone system, and we're continuing to enhance these with things like shared voicemail and reporting. Now, these are fairly basic experiences, but they get you to some somewhat interesting experiences. So for example, I've got a law office, 25, 30 people. I've got paralegals, I've got lawyers, I've got accounting, I've got billing. I want to get people to the right place. So Some of you might be looking at the diagram and saying, that's a mighty small diagram. So that's why Zoom is good. So we've got an IVR. We've got the ability to answer the phone. We've got the ability to set up a queue for billing, so Jacob and Laura can get the calls. We've got the ability to have hours and location. We've got the ability to have round robin for lawyers, so that if you want to talk to a lawyer, we can get you to the right one. We've got the ability to actually get you to the paralegals where the real work is actually done. And then obviously, if you've got other questions about more options, we can get you to the office manager, or the investigator, or records, or anything like that. So if you've got phone system, you can configure these types of services right now. So this allows you to pull all these things together, connect it with your service plans, connect it with your direct routing plans. All these things are available today. Quick show of hands, how many of you, if you've implemented Teams calling or meetings at all, how many of you have got an auto attendant or call queue in your organization going? All right, good. A little bit more than I would have thought, but that's good. So you get the sense that these are things that you can actually do right now. Now, this is great. We want people to use these when they're appropriate, but it's also sort of one part of the story. Now, if I want to do more than that, let's say that when somebody calls up, in fact, I want them to be able to enter an account number and look up a system of record and be able to find information about that account and then use that information and then send them to the right people. You're now moving into what we think about as you're managing the journey. So now I'm going to bring in an opportunity for some partner enhancement to this. Now, partners have the ability to sort of do this and way more. So I want to be able to integrate with CRM. I want to be able to look up information in that system. I want to be able to do recording. I want to have a even more structured experience for kind of more formal agents. We have partners that provide these types of things, and will bring you that connectivity directly with PSTN. So this ability to sort of bring these things together with direct routing, connected with phone system to help you then bring and bridge these agents with these users inside your organization, we think of this as a core part of our connect value. And in that connect value, there's really some very simple cases. These are super, super simple. So I get a call into my contact center agent. I want to send it to a person that's on Teams. How do I do that today? Today, if I want to do that, they need to have a phone system. They need a calling plan. I'm going to send the call over PSTN, over the public network, and hope that they answer. And if they don't, I guess I'll just have to figure it out from there. But I also want to be able to then send it to potentially that paralegals queue. And I want to be able to say, hey, I already set up a paralegals queue. I don't know which paralegal is going to answer the phone. And honestly, any one of them is fine. But I need to be able to send it to that queue. How do I do that? And how do I set these things up in a way that it actually works as a seamless way for my overall business? So we've done the work with direct routing. So in fact, that these organizations, when you set up these contact center solutions with direct routing, they're effectively directly peered with phone system. So now you're not necessarily sending these calls out over the direct PSTN networks. You're actually sending it over trusted networks directly into phone system and then through our backplane to your Teams users. So with that, we're early in the stages. One of those partners that we talked through is a partner called Genesys. They've done a number of things. And I just want to give you a quick sense of sort of what this looks like. So on the one side, we've got a Teams client. On the other side, we've got a Genesys Pure Cloud client. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm now going to start looking at a call. So I'm an agent in Pure Cloud. I'm going to sign in. That's now going to enable me for actually receiving calls. Now, in this case, I'm Allison. And so I'm going to be handling calls that are coming inside of the contact center from an external PSTN number. So I'm going to go ahead and actually get that call. And when I get the call, what I'm going to want to do is I'm now going to decide, hey, so based on this call, I'll answer it. And because the information in this call is such, I actually have decided based on this discussion that I need to bring in a subject matter expert. So I'm going to now want to go and find somebody in my organization to go and do that. Now, this is where we get to the other part of the key integration point here. I have access to all the people in the organization through Microsoft Graph. I can see who the users are, who the teams are, and we're enabling that ability for you as a provider to now bring that information and integrate it with your view of your users and see not only the information about the users themselves, but in fact their presence. So that ability to actually see that Trey was available. Now if I want to transfer to Trey, I can see that he's currently available, he's not on the phone, and so I can go ahead and actually consult and transfer. And when Trey now is on the right, he's in Teams, he's now going to get that call. And when he gets that call, he's actually going to now be able to see that it's actually initially from Allison. And he's now going to have that conversation with Allison. And then when Allison's ready and they've done sort of a handoff, then Allison will drop off and the call will now go through and it will be showing as from the customer themselves. Now, with this drop off, what you've actually seen here is a foundation. right? We've connected the networks, we've allowed the ability to send over a trusted network to the other side, and you now have the ability to sort of do these transfers. Now, that is built on a foundation of Microsoft Graph. It's built on the foundation of a new presence API that we're now making available in beta starting hopefully next week. And this beta API now allows you to actually see not just the presence information, but in fact the activity states. So the information that you might see in the client, for example, would look something like on the right-hand side of the slide. On the API side, this is actually a fairly straightforward API, allowing you to retrieve the presence and actually see the information for that user. And obviously, you can then start to then translate this into the user experience that makes sense in your UI with a presence indication. So this ability to actually blend presence, directory, direct routing now starts to basically enable the beginning part of the experience for how you put those foundation aspects together. Now, the call flow for this basically looks like the following. I've set up direct routing with my system, goes to the call center, I route to the agent decides to do the transfer, they send it back, the session border controller then sends it over the direct routing network, and it goes to the Teams user themselves. So, you get the sense this is the foundation, this is the beginning, but this is not the end, this is the beginning of that. So as we look forward then, now we also think about how you can start to extend those experiences. And when we extend those experiences, this is where we're building off of that foundation of the Teams platform that allows you to actually now deliver these enhanced experiences for you as an IT developer, you as an IT admin, and you as a partner to reach a much broader set of people. With this, you're able to reach into the store, you're able to reach into app stores, you're able to reach a much broader audience than you would have ever reached with just your direct opportunity. Now, we're already seeing that this is something that's empowering customers to actually move forward and solve some of those problems. So I talked about IT Help Desk, right? That internal customer. Already today with Teams Platform, we're seeing customers either building their own or working with partners to actually build automation to help solve those IT help desk problems. So it's not just call IT help desk, it's actually let's use a bot with intelligence and automation to help streamline and automate that so people can actually self-serve and we can get the right conversations to the help desk folks at the right time. So whether it's companies like HCL being able to pull those together, this now is empowering lots of different companies to be able to move forward on that. So it's really about sort of helping to bring the solution to life with a set of capabilities that cover not just the explicit extensibility aspects of Teams, but in fact also the back-end services of the Microsoft 365 platform. So inclusive of Graph, SharePoint, Power Apps, Flow, or now Power Automate, as we will call it this week. Our ability to sort of bring these things together really help to drive your application with Teams together into a whole new style of working. Now, ultimately, we think that this is where extending starts to now bring a new set of value, where you're taking advantage of all of the logic and capability in your service, and you're starting to now connect that with this Teams extensibility to bring in a new set of people into this process. Now, why is that important? Because didn't we start this conversation talking about contact center and people taking calls? Like, don't I already have an agent experience for them? Well, I want you to think differently about that.
Tony Chocolonely is not a chocolate company that makes impact. We're an impact company that's making chocolate.
Child labor and modern slavery is still a big problem in the chocolate industry because farmers are not getting paid a fair price. We developed a living income model. Instead of just paying the farm gate price, we pay an additional Tony's premium. Our mission is to make 100% slave-free the norm in chocolate.
The store and the chocolate truck really helps because it's one of the means how we can build those personal relationships.
We had an increasing complexity in terms of number of offices all over the world, 2 in the US, 1 in the UK, 1 in Amsterdam, and we're communicating a lot with Ghana and Ivory Coast. We actually got an opportunity to implement Teams for one single solution.
With Teams, it makes it way more personal. I can see the facial expressions of my colleagues and to have conversations on a more equal level.
We support each other.
Same here.
People call us with all kind of questions about our mission, for example, or chocolate bars, so that's why we have a Chocophone.
When you extend Microsoft Teams with telephony capabilities, it becomes even more powerful. Everything you need to collaborate is there in one single interface.
The personal approach, that's something that we're trying to do in everything. Serving our customers and our Choco fans is so important for us.
We are trying to set the right example in order for other chocolate companies to copy our business model, and Microsoft 365 helps us in doing it.
So, great story about Tony's Chocoloni. But really it's about how you can now start to bring the journey together with teams to reach everywhere. When we talk about everywhere, we're talking about, you heard the list in the video, trucks, right? Farmers, customers in the stores, internal help. All of these things together, these are all part of the journey that are trying to help move this discussion forward, and you want solutions that can actually reach all of those people when they need it, where they need it, integrated with all the communications and teamwork capabilities of teams. So in this case, we had the partners here, including Anywhere 365, Vodafone as a carrier partner for Teams, and even integrations with Salesforce to help pull this story together for this particular customer. So what does this start to look like then as you bring these things to bear? This isn't about just bringing that exact agent experience to other people that have no training in that. This is about bringing contextual experiences to people when they need it, where they need it. So think about, how do I bring intelligence about how we're doing? How do I actually enable people to dynamically configure where the service is going? How do I start to bring more insights into the conversations as they're happening? So when you look at some of these types of use cases, we can start to see opportunities from some of our partners here. So for example, the ability to now start to bring in dashboards that are for my personal use to see what's happening across the service, or to be able to actually start to see dashboards in the context of a particular team or team context that we're working with. The ability for me to now actually drive and configure the service itself through Teams. So I don't have to navigate or remember to go to a separate location or a separate tool. I can actually bring all of that service configuration, and I can in fact even leverage other aspects of the Microsoft 365 platform like SharePoint Framework to be able to now actually drive that configuration. Now we're seeing benefits from this today with customers. In the example for company Cinemedia that was able to now transition from siloed different IT experiences into a unified IT experience using Teams and using one of our solutions from our partner Luware to be able to now bring these things together into a much more agile, dynamic solution. So this is part of that reach and part of empowering people to sort of move forward. Now when we think about sort of the contextual aspects of this, it also starts to think about new ways of interacting. So it's not just about, hey, when I send you a call, should I send you a little call pop-up or toast that you then have to think about and educate people around. We already have a model for being able to actually send people interactions with more information from cards, or to be able to actually see what's happening and to send them suggestions and insights directly in line with the conversation as it's happening. Similarly, when you think about moving the process forward in the workflows, you don't have to train everybody in the organization to do that. You can suggest the right next best action based on the real-time discussions. And that can be either directly in a conversation or it can be adjacent. If you start talking or working with someone on a customer problem, directly from that customer problem, let's say I want to connect back with them, the ability to use that contextual task workflow directly off of messages becomes a key step about how you're now connecting these things together. When you think about how that moves forward to the final step, then you can also think about now working with these conversations directly in line and actually moving that forward. So rather than having a complex UI or new client that everybody has to manage and deploy and get trained on, you can send them just the information they need to move forward. Now, this opportunity around sort of extending is something that we are continuing to build capabilities out, and you're going to see us continue to move the experiences forward with our partners as we do this. But these are solutions that are already getting built, that are already getting used, and so we think there's a lot of opportunity to make these happen. Similarly, there's a lot of opportunity to transform the underlying services that these solutions are using. And when we think about that nature of that with Azure and M365, we think there's an amazing amount of opportunity that comes with that. So the ability to now actually start building directly on Azure and leveraging those solutions for all of the benefits that Azure has accrue not just to the customer, but in fact even to the partner. So if you look at all the announcements from earlier this week with Azure Arc, for example, or Azure Synapse, there's a ton of sort of situations where in fact that ability to manage across a sort of very disparate kind of ecosystem can actually become a differentiator for you as a partner building these solutions. And for you as a customer, you want that agility for your partner. Now when you start to think about sort of how these things come together, then there's a lot of different, again, use cases that you can start to take advantage of. And as we move beyond sort of the connect stage, you can start to see opportunities for everything from how do I bring in artificial intelligence and machine learning? How do I bring in all of the Azure Analytics and Synapse capabilities that we talked about this week? How do we start to bring the power of the Power Platform to all of your users? So it's not just about do you have the data, but are you in fact enabling all of the users in that organization to pull all those things together? Now, part of this we can start to see with partners and customers using our communications APIs in Microsoft Graph. And this enables a slightly different workflow. In this workflow now, I want to be able to place a call. That number could be coming into a calling plan number from phone system. It could be coming through a number provided by direct routing. When that number comes in, we're able to actually receive that in our communications infrastructure through our APIs and actually bring in the service that will now respond and answer to those calls. Now, this infrastructure is the same infrastructure that's powering our call queues and auto attendance right now. So everybody that raised your hand that said that you were using call queues and auto attendance, you were using this call flow today. Now the question is as you move forward and you're a partner, how do you start to innovate and enhance these experiences? So one of those, for example, is now I want to be able to join the experience. I have an API for being able to do that. Once I can get to the media, I can now start to do other sorts of things. For example, being able to bring in people dynamically and to be able to now start to actually set recording or be able to bring in a cognitive service so I can do things like speech to text, text to speech, video recognition, etc. The whole panoply of capabilities in cognitive services open up when you have access to the direct media. And then finally, I can be able to go ahead and obviously terminate the call. So these capabilities are unlocked with that ability to get effectively that direct access. And as you think about this, it also now starts to then extend into some of the work around, for example, virtual consults. So you may have seen that we announced a new virtual consults capability with Teams, which includes an application experience for being able to schedule online meetings with trusted video for external participants. As part of that, that also includes a new set of APIs for both creating those meetings programmatically through the graph, as well as being able to schedule those meetings in ways that can actually show up. So if you have Exchange and you're using Calendar, you can actually create scheduled meetings with online meeting links. And you can also create just the online meeting links themselves so that if you're using, for example, a third-party scheduling service in an EHR, for example, you can create those meeting links, store them in your EHR system, and now you have the ability to always jump back into those Teams meetings through your experience. So in this case, for example, I've now scheduled the meeting through my EHR. So I will go ahead and create that in Graph. When I create that in Graph, then I will go ahead and actually bring those participants in. They'll alerted that the patient is now in the meeting room, and then they can join through their Teams meeting experience. So all of these are aspects of being able to consume the communications API and bring these things together in a way that is moving the experience and the journey forward. So ultimately, the takeaway here is what we're really talking about is it's not one integration. Where we're at today is not where we're going to be, but it's about moving and evolving through that process and that journey. And so we want to make sure that we are really landing this concept of Teams as the hub for internal and external communication with partner solutions. We think the partner solutions in empowering you as customers to get the right experience for every team. This isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. This is an empowerment play for you as a customer and you as a partner. And ultimately, it's about moving this discussion forward with all these capabilities as we drive forward and as your imagination kind of takes hold and you drive your creativity forward with those capabilities. So that can either look like the Connect model that we talked about. That could look like combining Connect and Extend models. That could also look like connecting Power and Extend models. All of these are good things. All of these are good solutions. It's a question of finding the fit for you And our focus is really on empowerment of that. So quick little reference table here so we can get into some details that might come up in some Q&A. Who's running these things? Is M365 sign-in required for all of these? And how are these service connectivity sort of plans actually sort of managing itself? One way that I might just add here from a note is when we think about direct routing and when we think about platform is just another type of connection, but it's really connecting over the Azure backplane. So think of it as an even better network connection, but it's still ultimately a network connection between your service and phone system. All right. We're closing in on time here, so I just want to hit on a couple of key points in terms of how do we move forward from this. So ultimately, one of the key questions here is that's great. Is this a next week thing? Is it a 6-month thing? Is it a 5-year thing? What's going on? So we actually have multiple partners that we are working with, and we're very excited to see the partners that have already been investing here, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing more partners investing here. But we also expect that these partners are effectively very interested to help you move forward with your journey. So as we move forward with these partners, we expect that going into the first part of the new year is going to be a great opportunity for you to be trying Teams calling to bring that hub for internal and external interactions vision together in your customer and in your company. And as we sort of bring these things forward, we also expect that this is going to be something that we're going to continue to want to tell and sort of retell the story so that everybody understands our point of view around this. Part of telling that point of view is also recognizing that we want these to be incredibly trusted and valuable solutions for every organization. And part of that we announced earlier this week is actually the introduction of a Certified for Microsoft Teams program for Contact Center. And as part of that, then that will also be a program that will be spinning up. We're finalizing sort of the final details for it this quarter, and we look forward to getting some of the initial certifications and partner solutions through early in calendar 20. And as part of that, this will leverage and build on top of all of the goodness that already is there with Microsoft AppSource and with our Teams infrastructure. So everything that you've been seeing at the conference or documentation about how to manage Teams apps, everything that you've been seeing in the keynotes about managing via policy and app setup policy and app permission policy, everything that you're seeing about Microsoft 365 app certification, all these things are accruing to the value and the story for how these apps sort of move forward. It's also a key part about having customers empowered to move forward as well. So the ability for you to start the solution and customers to tailor is a key part of how we think all of this is going to actually materialize in the real world. So with that, I'm just going to leave you with a couple of things. Ultimately, we believe that it is vital for Teams and our solutions around customer journeys to come together to drive the conversations, the experiences, the workflows, the insights, the network that you guys are building, and to drive those with the connections and the extensions and the power that you get from the collective Microsoft platform, and to help drive the transformation inside of your organization. With that, the timer says I've got 56 seconds left. So in 56 seconds, can everybody sprint from one end of the room to the other end of the room, and then back, and then I'll give tickets to the winner for a free device. And I'm only partially kidding because I don't want everybody to stand up. But I do have tickets for free devices. So the first 2 questions, I will give you a ticket for a free speaker puck. Question number 1.
What's the price?
What's the price? That is an awesome question. You thought I was kidding about the free speaker pucks, didn't you? Thank you for asking the question. All right, what's the price? I'd buy that for $1. That's a movie reference, sorry. The core story here is it's going to be around Teams and obviously with phone system. So phone system is an add-on for E3 or for E5. Partners have different pricing schemes, and so that will be a discussion to have there. Question number 2, yes.
So the next awkward question. In your partner space, there was one that was missing. Do you see your partner portfolio increasing, and is that vision of, I mean, Cisco Contact Center, is that a possibility, you think, in the
So
future?
I think the question is do we see the partner portfolio increasing?
Yeah.
Yes is the short answer. There are other people that are already working on solutions. Ultimately, our focus is going to be on people that are in the program and that have been getting certification. So that's where we're going to be focusing time and customer attention, is on making sure that you get the highest quality solutions that you can. Yeah. So the question in the front was, are we integrating in with legacy PBXs? So the Connect model allows you to basically bring some of those existing PBXs together, and I'm happy to talk about a little bit more details about that. All right, any other questions in the back? Yes.
So is that the live monitoring also included?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Is the live monitoring for agents also included? Or is that only available or is it third-party solutions?
I think your question is if the extensions are available for customers?
The live monitoring. When I have like a normal call queues now.
Yes.
So then I have a black box. I have no view how many calls inside.
In terms of the current voice apps, call queues and
Correctly.
things, correct.
So with this solution that's coming, have the customer now a view how many calls inside?
I understand.
So well, that's the thing. Well, when I must go up the agent or not. So
I think I understand. So if the question is what kind of analytics or reporting can I get off of call queues currently, and then do I need something else to try and get that? So part of what I showed is we have a set of work that we're doing to enable sort of basic call analytics against the voice apps in Teams today for call queues and auto attendance. So those are coming very soon. Partners provide an even more enhanced level of analytics and reporting. So depending on what type of reporting needs you have, you might want to look at a partner solution for that. But it will depend on kind of which group and which analytics you're looking for. Yeah. Would you like a? Yes?
When will the APIs be released?
Great question. So we'll be talking more about the APIs very soon.
And the answer is?
Very soon.